broken, so I'll have to fix that.
No worries.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Investor Frame podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sparks. And on this show, we ask successful real estate investors and entrepreneurs to share their stories so we can all learn from their experiences and get closer to the things that we want in life. Today, I'm here with David Pere. Dave is a new friend of mine. I met him at a mastermind event a few months ago, and we just got along real well. We were talking about Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who's someone that as an author that he and I both really enjoy. But Dave is a former Marine. He is a financially free Marine Corps veteran who devotes his free time now to helping service members and veterans learn how to build wealth through real estate, entrepreneurship, personal finance. He has a mastermind and a podcast that he runs called Military to Millionaire. He's doing a lot of cool stuff in the real estate space, and he went from a negative net worth to financially free in under 6 years as an active duty Marine. So another just great case in point, like you can do this while you're working another job, especially as a Marine. We know how demanding that can be. So I'm extremely excited to have Dave in today to share a little bit about his journey and his story. Welcome in, Dave. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for having me, man. It was good to meet you in Keystone, and it's been good to hang out a couple times on Zoom since then.
Yeah, man. We got to chatting after you heard me give a presentation on blockchain and stuff like that. And you were like, whoa, that might be the first time I've ever heard someone explain it in a way that was simple enough for people to really understand. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the way that you kind of approach business. I've been sort of following you now for the last few months, ever since I met you, and just you do so many cool things, man. So let's kick it off today with a 6-word update, as we do with every show.
Helping service members and veterans build wealth. And for the record, I typed service members in as a single word to make it fit the 6, and Google did not spell check it and say it needed to be 2. So I think we're clear.
Love it.
You know.
Well, tell me more about that.
That's kind of the mission, right? So that's my thing. I'm trying to help as many service members and vets find that financial freedom. I think the military is like the best. It sets people up for success more than most occupations do, coming out of high school, coming out of college. And unfortunately, a lot of them get wrapped up in buying the fast car or the toys or whatever. And you almost have to work to tank financial freedom in the military. And yet we all do, myself included. And so just trying to help us, help service members and vets learn all their benefits, VA loan, thrift savings plan, navigate the VA disability claims process, and all these other things that we have going in our favor, with the ultimate goal, and we'll get to the solvable problem, but of just helping them be set up for success long term. And the solvable problem being helping people avoid veteran homelessness and ultimately suicide. Right? There's a huge issues in the veteran community that are, I think, mostly solvable by just having people take advantage of their benefits, understand their benefits, and be able to utilize them. I mean, the opportunities are all there. Again, vets are set up very well for success, and they just need to know what's available to them.
So is it an education problem?
I think it's a culture and education problem, right? I think the education's there, but it's not, the military's obviously not in the business of being like, we're going to, you don't join the military and they're like, everything we're going to do is teach you about finance, right? That's
right.
Not, they're going to teach you about war, which is great. The opportunity's there, the resources are there, but you have to go and look for it. And the culture in the military is not a culture of, hey, you should join the military and we're going to bring you in under our wing and teach you all about this finance stuff. It's almost sad, but if you join the military and you're like, I'm going to go to the education center on my, during work and go take this class about the VA loan, which is free and offered on base. A lot of times your unit will be like, well, no, unfortunately you're not, because we got this thing to do at work and we're not going to let you go to that awesome class that's offered for free. And so it's kind of this weird conundrum where it's like all the resources are available, but you've got to be in the right unit at the right time where they're going to allow you to go take advantage of all those resources. And so there's like a culture thing where it's just not important to the mass side of the military. And then we get caught up in keeping up with the Joneses, or, the whole mentality of like, when we were in combat, it was like, well, I might die next year, so might as well buy the Corvette, and have some fun along the way. Chase and tail, whatever, it's a bunch of alpha males who are just doing all the crazy things and having fun in their 20s. So
I can't really relate, but I can certainly like imagine what that would be like to sort of not only is there a culture around, let's just say, not giving the information of it's, I mean, that's the same thing in a W-2 job, right? You're not going to join a W-2 job and they're like, hey, let me teach you how you can build a life outside of this and like
exactly
teach you all these tools. So, I would say it's fairly similar to my experience in sales, and just my corporate experience was like, I wasn't provided any of that information. It was almost taboo to be working on your quote side hustles while you're building, they're like, hey, you work for me and we need you to work 60 hours a week. We need you to travel and we need you to be engaged in the job. And I would imagine that's very similar in the military.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about your own personal experience? You went from a negative negative net worth
two at times,
a negative net worth to, a millionaire in 6 years through the military. Tell me more about that process and just like how you were able to get financially free.
Yeah, I mean, it was simple, really. I mean, it's basic real estate stuff, right? I bought a duplex. I lived in one half, rented the other, and then that was kind of the light bulb moment. Someone had handed me Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then I read some more of the Purple Library, Robert Kiyosaki's books, and then stumbled into Bigger Pockets and read a bunch of Brandon Turner's books. And so I bought the duplex and I rented, one side out, lived in the other, and I went from paying, this was Missouri in 2015, so like $550 for a 2-bed, 1-bath apartment, to paying out of pocket like $125 to live in a 2-1 and rent the other half. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'm saving, $425 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then like 6 months later, I got stationed in Hawaii. And when I moved out, that other half of the unit duplex got rented out. And all of a sudden I'm making like $220 a month. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like proof of concept, this works. And I'd only put, it was an FHA loan. So I think I'd only put, including flooring, I put new LVP in and some paint and stuff. I think I put like $4,000 into the property. I bought it for $79,900 or something like that. And so, to make $220 a month, I was like, oh, this is pretty sweet. This is going to pay for itself in a year and a half. Not to mention the $400 a month that I've been saving for that 6. So it had paid for itself in, year one. Mm-hmm. And then year and a half later, I bought a 10 unit, and that was the best deal I ever did, actually, so far. And I mean, it just kind of scaled from there, right? Like that. It took a while to save up for the 10. I ended up buying that thing with some crazy terms. It was like 85% bank finance, 10% seller finance, 5% down. So I put like $10,990 down, bought it for $212. 4 years later to the day, sold it for $340. Yeah. And it was, cash flow the whole time. So I put just under 11,000 down, and I walked away with, math in public, like 120 4 years later. And then, but during that time, just kept learning about finding deals off market and finding deals on the market, negotiating and buy and hold stuff and basic stuff and saving money and just basics of taxes and, typical buy and hold stuff, and just slowly kept rolling money back in as I made it. And I went from, the duplex to the 10 to, 1 to 4 units and some bigger stuff here and there and whatever. And then it was another apartment, and then we bought a hotel. And it was just a bunch of random things that just slowly stockpiled till at one point we were buying 4 houses a month, and we would wholesale 2 and flip 1 and burr 1. And then I kind of shut that company down and slowed back down. But, by the time I left the military in 21, so 6 years, later, I had 104 units rented. I think it was like 4 million in mortgages, and I was making probably right around like 4 or 5 grand a month, net cash flow ish, fluctuates all over the place, as everyone who is in real estate long enough knows.
Yeah.
But then I had the online presence too, and that was making some money. And so I was able to walk out of the military, and I was actually able to pay somebody a W-2 salary that was worth just about what my base pay was in the military, and still not have to take a job. So I felt pretty comfortable where I was. And then just kept buying some real estate. So, added an RV park, added some this, some that. Currently selling a lot of my like more C and D class smaller stuff and stockpiling some cash to move into some more hands-off, bigger deals. But it was just, the long story short is slow and steady.
Yeah.
Just buying stuff that would pay me to own it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know you're buddies with Brandon Turner, and most people who are familiar with that name, right? He was the Bigger Pockets podcast host for a long time, wrote a bunch of books that inspired a lot of us in real estate. And he has this term, he describes the stack. I don't know if that's exactly how he says it, but like that concept of you buy a duplex, and then you buy a triplex, and then you buy a fourplex, and then and you just start stacking it. You don't take the whale down in one bite, right? You just start taking chunks out of it, and it slowly starts building and building and building. In this case, you went from a duplex to a 10 unit. But I hear, and I remember it well because I didn't really start full time in real estate until, 2020. I had been buying a couple rentals, and I kind of did the same thing. It was just, I bought a house, and it was like a year and a half later, like, okay, let's just go buy another house. And then we just turned that one into a rental, and then we did it again, and then we did it again. And you look up, and now you're sitting on, a lot of cash flow with a short, in a short amount of time, but it seems daunting at the time. And I get this, I get this comment. Yeah, that may have worked, because you said you went from like a $215,000, $20,000, deal, and then you refied it later for 3-4, something like that. And it's like, yeah, Dave, I'm sure that would have worked between 2013 and 2022, but that's not going to work today. Interest rates are too high. The market is too uncertain. What do you say to those types of people? Considering real estate has been a wealth builder for decades and decades and decades, but all of a sudden now, apparently the conditions aren't right to be able to start stacking these types of deals up. What would you say to that person?
I would say that I bought that 10 unit in February of 2017. And in 2017, people were already calling for a crash.
Yeah.
And they were saying that the run was over and you can't make any money anymore in real estate. And by all accounts, in a lot of the analytics that had been done, you could have predicted that the cycle had peaked again, because we were up over the values of when the '08 crash had hit already. And so on a graph, you could easily say, well, yeah, we're past the 8-year mark of the cycle. So in the 8 to 12-year cycle, we've already entered when the window is, and we're up above the last crash. And like in the cycle, like there was an argument there. So yeah, sure. But you know what I knew that they didn't know? Not a whole lot, because I was a brand new investor. I didn't really know much, but I knew enough to know that in '08, the market that I invest in dropped like 5 to 15% on average in property value, and that it was a cash flow property. It wasn't a high appreciation property. And I knew that a $212,000 purchase on a building that appraised for $240 and was 10 units that was currently rented for $4,800 a month gross, while not in a great area, was probably not going to drop too much more in value.
Yeah.
And so,
well, a deal is a deal is a deal, right? I mean,
yeah, like it worked. It
right.
Cash flowed as was. So if it went down in value, I didn't care. I was pulling in $500-600 a month net on this thing. So if it dropped $100,000 in value and was still paying me $600 a month, I could wait until it went back up in value. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you what your opinion is. We use this phrase, and I probably got it from Taleb, this idea of engineering luck. I think that there's a lot of people who look at someone like yourself and they say, well, he got lucky, right? Or I get that, right? I feel that at times. I used to look at other people and it's like, well, they got lucky. They had some favorable things happen. And it's like, yeah, but you can't get lucky unless you're actually in the game, first of all. Creating scenarios where good things can go right has a lot to do with preventing bad things from going wrong. Like it's hard to go wrong buying cash flowing real estate, in my opinion. If the deal makes sense, you buy that, you hold it long enough, you're going to look to some people like you got lucky buying that. But we know that has absolutely nothing to do with luck. We're engineering it into the system. And this whole concept of buy and hold, that's why it's so powerful. That's the level of education that I didn't get at my job, that I'm assuming a lot of people don't get in the military, is like, you can call it might look like luck if you're looking at it without understanding all of the, the variables at play here. But we know this is a tried and true way to build wealth over time, right? It's going to take a good bit of time, 6 years in your case, to build that financial stability, financial freedom. But it's not luck. It's just consistently applying the principles that we've learned over time and buying good deals. And yeah, I've found that I'm even finding myself becoming a little bit more hesitant in the current market. I'm not saying that you should go gangbusters and buy anything that looks good, but I am saying there's still deals to be had, even in today, especially with some of the loan products that veterans have access to, right? You have excellent financing, super low down payments. That completely changes the numbers on these deals, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The VA loan's the best primary residence market or mortgage on the market. And the other thing that, and I always tell people, if your lender or agent or somebody is telling you that that's not the case, then it's just because they don't fully understand the product, and you should go find another agent and lender. Because, as a licensed agent and lender, not that I transact either, I can tell you that the training for your license doesn't actually teach you crap about the VA loan, right? So if somebody's telling you that they're not competitive, it's just because they aren't an expert in that, which is fine. Go find someone who is. Yeah. But the VA loan has this thing that no other mortgage, to my knowledge, has, called the IRRL, which is the interest rate reduction refinance loan, which 210 days or 6 months after you close on the loan, you're eligible to use. And it is literally just for reducing the interest rate, but it's a refi, and it doesn't require credit verification, income verification, or you occupying the property. And so let's say you bought today and rates are at 7, and you're worried that rates might go up or they might go down. And so you're like, oh man, what if I wait because rates might go down? What if I wait and rates do go up and I miss? Well, you buy today, you lock in that 7 so that you don't have to worry about if rates go up and you missed the chance. Because if rates go down, and let's say they happen to go down to 4% 7 months from now, you can execute the IRRL. And yeah, there's a 0.5% funding fee to execute it, but you don't have to do a credit check again. You don't have to have you could be jobless and not even live in the house anymore and do the IRRL, and they would drop your interest rate to that 4%.
That's killer.
Yeah. So boom, you just hedged your risk.
Well, and so what does that have to do with purchase price? Because, my wife and we've been working with some newer, first-time home buyers, excuse me. And, their concern is, well, what happens if this house I'm buying for $500,000 is not worth $500,000 in, a year, right? Or in 6 months. And I had to have a conversation with them about like, well, you invest in stocks, right? You have a 401k, you do this type of stuff. It's like, well, there's a difference between trading stocks and accumulating stocks over a 30-year time horizon, right? First of all, if you're looking at the purchase price on a 6-month time horizon, I got news for you. You're flipping the house and trading the house. This is not a buy and hold scenario, right? And that used to trip me up, but it's mostly about the cash flow. And if you've got cash flow at 7%, you're going to have cash flow at 5%. You know what I mean? It's only going to get better. Who cares what the value of the house is worth? Because we're buying and holding this for a certain amount of time. I care less about the purchase price and I care more about the cash flow in those types of scenarios. Is that how you look at that as well?
Yeah. And I think if you're buying a house to live in and your plan is not to hold it for at least a few years, then you should probably just freaking rent. Like if you're planning on exiting a year down the road, like especially if you're planning on exiting a year down the road and you're going zero down, like just rent. Just save yourself all of the headaches and rent a place. I rented a place in San Diego, found a place that let me sublet bedrooms, Airbnb bedrooms, and lived for almost free in a brand new I was the first person to ever live in the house. They let me pick if I wanted turf or mowable grass, and I got turf, so I didn't have to mow.
Nice.
And I rented a 4-3 and Airbnb 2 of the bedrooms, and I had $3,000 a month rent for 2 years. And I made $2,700 on average in Airbnb. So I paid basically $300 a month for 2 years to live in this brand new baller house with like pool and hot tub right around the corner and an HOA. Because I was only going to live there for 2 years and didn't know what the market looked like. Didn't really want to own long-term in San Diego County and didn't want to pay $540,000 to find out. And
It's killer.
Whatever. And so like, if you're not going to be there long term, you don't want to own there long term, then you don't have to. And I'm not saying like I love buying houses. Don't get me wrong, but like it's not always the answer. There are other answers. But to your point though, like everyone's heard the stories of the people who bought in 07 and lost their house. But every single one of those people would have, if they had been able to just hold on till now, they'd be able to sell at a pretty significant profit. And so even if your house does go down in value next year, if you just hold on, you'll be okay in the long run.
Yeah. How does all this play in with your solvable problem? You know, you were telling me it's funny because I think you and I've from what I've heard about you and, you know, listened to you share, I'm sort of shutting down. I wouldn't say shutting down, but pulling back on more of a volume-based business. You were saying you're doing at one point in time about 4 deals a month. That was about the volume we were doing. And we're pulling back on that at this point in time because I don't want to do volume. So I'm curious to hear, you know, as you've built this financial freedom, you built it up to 104 units, you're cash flowing, you've got a podcast that's doing incredible, you've got a great online presence, and you're educating all sorts of people. How do you think about your solvable problem today?
Yeah. So, and for the reference or for the record, I actually sold the wholesaling company last summer. So I also scaled that way back to where the only deals that I've done over the last 6 months, other than selling properties, I bought an RV park and we almost bought a mobile home park last month, but it fell out of contract. And that same group might be, you know, I'm looking for bigger stuff and really researching development, looking into some bigger stuff, just more, some, you know, self-storage, mobile home, RV park, exciting stuff where I'm not going to be the operator, but can do 1 or 2 deals a year potentially and not have to do more than that. Because you're right. And we'll talk more on the barbell strategy about why all that is. But because my other answer where I'm actually putting my time is the upside stuff. But the solvable problem for me, like, you know what it is I don't think that there's a reason that most, like there's this, you know, veteran homeless problem. And I don't think it should be a problem. I think that the VA loan makes it much easier for veterans to get into homes. And I think that there's, you know, disability for a lot of these men and women who served that, you know, if filed properly, offers the income that will allow you to utilize the VA loan to get into a home or housing, assuming that you have at least some basic understanding of finances. And there are programs out there that I'm trying to figure out which one I want to work with potentially to see, you know, what that looks like. But ideally, like even just through the community, just help and get the word out to just help these people be set up for success so that that never becomes a problem. But then, you know, unfortunately, the suicide thing, like, man, I've just lost too many people that I know and the veteran community as a whole. But, you know, personally, I mean, while we were in Keystone, a guy that I deployed with in 2010 took his, did the whole suicide by cop thing in Colorado. I mean, he was less than an hour from us while we were in Keystone. I got a phone call one night while we were there, and that was, I think, the fourth of the 56 people I deployed with in 2010. That was the fourth person who's committed suicide. And so it's a mess. It's really unfortunate. And I think a lot of the reason for that is that people get out of the military and they lose their identity, they lose their purpose. And, then you throw finances in the mix, and it's a really dark space. And I think that if we can help people get their finances in order, for one, but, then find help with the purpose and the identity, and just help them understand that, like, there's a life outside of the military, then we can really set them on the right path to avoid all of that. And I think that all of that is accomplishable through, whether it's real estate or even just business in general, entrepreneurship, whatever, just following your passions. And I think that you can make money through your passions. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the W-2. I think it's just like, man, if you can house hack, or you can, find some investments or just some hobbies or whatever. And so I'm just kind of passionate about, like, okay, how can I create like a really cool veteran community that's supportive, helpful, full of good resources for people who are like trying to better themselves, and full of people who want to help each other better themselves, and free of spam and all kinds of BS, and just like, all right. And I don't necessarily know what the long-term vision is for that. There's part of me that's thinking about maybe starting my own charity, but then there's also a lot of other veteran charities out there. And so it seems like a shame to start your own. Why not partner with someone? But just got to find the right one. So lots of thoughts. That's the problem that I need to solve one of these days, but I got to get to the place where I have enough free time to actually pull back and solve that problem. So that's why I'm scaling the real estate back and trying to move it into more passive assets to focus my time accordingly.
Yeah, that's a big vision, man. And I'm just more recently, I've been hanging out with Dean, and, you and I have been chatting quite a bit more, and I'm just becoming more aware of the problem that you're describing with veteran homelessness and, suicide, and just lack of all the things that you just mentioned. And it's such a worthwhile cause. I'm curious to get your opinion on, the concept of, like, you got to put your mask on first. And this idea that, you're sort of alluding to it, and we'll use this to sort of transition into the barbell conversation, which is for people like yourself that have this big, I wouldn't say, vision, but like call to make a massive impact in a certain community, right? And it seems like you do. Well, that takes time. It takes resources. It takes energy. It takes relationships. You need attention. You can't just, meaning like, yeah, it's great if you're, but if a handful of veterans, the guys that were in your, your group or whatever. And yeah, but if you want to make a massive impact, you need a platform to capture the attention, to make this level of impact. And again, in order to do all those things, it takes time to build that out, which is why, what you've done is you've built so much reliability into your life through the rentals and through the different things that you have. And it sounds like over the last couple of years, you've been clearing more space to spend time on what we call the asymmetrical upside bets, right? And in this case, that's this big vision that you have for making an impact on the veteran community. So tell me a little bit more about, that barbell, how you see the reliable side, the asymmetrical upside, and what you've had to do over the last couple of years to get things out of the middle so that you have less risk, so you can spend more time on your passions and things that actually make an influence and an impact in the world.
Yeah. So I love the barbell theory. And I have for a while. Right. So, and I'm sure your audience is well aware of what that is. And we probably don't need to dig into a description, which is refreshing. So, Normally I have to describe, that. So obviously,
Well, first of all, like, I think a lot of people, I was probably the first time they heard that concept, but this is like talked about by the Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius. This was talked about thousands of years ago. Nassim Taleb's been writing about this for a decade or more. So it is an old concept, but it's still fairly new to a lot of people.
yeah. Yeah. And it's such a great, I mean, it's such a just simple concept. And, it's even the concept. I mean, when you really think about it through like even examples of like, risk, like a book, right? It's like there's no downside other than potentially wasting 4 hours reading a book. Not that this is actually a readable book. This is a planner, but it's the one that's sitting next to me. But the upside potential to reading a book is fucking huge, right? Yeah. And so, so obviously for me, real estate is the stable asset thing that's going to build wealth and store wealth and kick cash flow and allow me to do things and, not take a ton of time as I move it to more passive and hands off and be able to pull equity and that thing. And in theory, we'll continue to fund the beast. And then, there's the passion projects that are on the far end that are the ultimate goal, and kind of in the, I guess not the middle, but what's been the barbell side that will hopefully eventually become more on the stable end as we go further into passion project world. But it's currently the upside is the content side, right? The brand, the content, that's for me, that's the super upside, still minimal risk. I mean, there's the risk of like tanking your reputation by saying something really stupid and getting canceled. But even that is not like a negative thing. It's just kind of like back to zero, I guess. Mm-hmm. But the upside potential for content, branding, getting the word out there is huge. And the online, the things that you can do online and the scalability with minimal, team, minimal expenses is just massive. And you can generate recurring revenue streams, and it's been really cool. And so that's where I've been putting a lot of my effort over the last year. That's where I'm continuing. And one of the things that I want to do over the next year is build out like a media company for service members and vets, because a lot of people are trying to build out, brands and or content strategies. And I think that there's an opportunity there. And I think that intellectual property and content is only going to become more valuable over the coming years. And so I'd like to offer that as a service to people where it's like, oh, you want to have a voice? Cool. Like, here's some packages that we can help you with becoming whatever, whatever that goal is. And then I think that through all of that, because you're right, attention, through all of that, gaining the attention, helping other people get the attention is how we can really start to inflect that change on the bigger picture. Because it's like, okay, not only has the attention grown and my platform's grown, but now we've got all these other people that we've helped, most of which are in my sphere as veterans. And as we then start to work more and more with these, whether it's a charity that we are working with or a charity that we're building, to work on these causes that I'm passionate about, that a lot of them are passionate about as well, we've got, millions of eyeballs to reach. And exactly. I think that's kind of the goal, kind of the avenue of approach, rather than a monetary approach. It's just a attention approach.
Yeah. Well, so I've been in sales my whole life, and for whatever reason, the word sales can oftentimes have this like negative connotation. It's just like nails on a chalkboard. And so does the word attention, right? We take that as if it's like negative. Oh, you want all this attention. Oh, you want all this attention, right? It's like, yeah, it's almost as if it's self-serving, like just to stroke the ego. And maybe for some people that's the case. Not saying that like people can't abuse the currency of attention, but I think we can also agree that that currency is extremely valuable to someone who is looking to make a big impact on a lot of people. You can't do it without attention, without the eyeballs, right? It's hard to make an impact on that many people without those eyeballs. And so to your point, what a tremendous upside bet content is. Building a digital presence, building a personal brand. You stand for something, right? The upside to that is almost, infinite, right? I would go as far to say, like, it's really difficult to quantify the total upside that brings. Again, look at some of the people you were talking about, someone like Steve Sims, right? I know you're interviewing him today, and you know, guys like Brandon Turner. I mean, these folks, they set out and they just started doing things. It became this upside play that now is a massive, reliable source of attention, income, relationships, all the things that we want more of. You can get that through upside plays. And so, no, I love that you said that, because that's pretty much where my focus is right now, is using my digital presence to create upside. I don't know what's going to come from it. Yep. But I know that it's a valuable currency that can be worth something if you have enough of it.
Well, it's like it's funny because I've become, I won't say disenfranchised with Grant Cardone. I it's like a roller coaster for me with Grant Cardone. Yeah. Like sometimes I love him, sometimes I hate him. My wife once asked me to stop watching his YouTube channel because she was just like, I can't follow his content. He's so all over the place. And she's right. He's like, if you watch his videos, once she said that, I'm like, oh, he's like here, then he's here. Now he's talking about, but whatever. My favorite Grant Cardone quote is the one where he says, best known will always beat best. And I'm like, man, every time I go to create content, I'm like, yep, there we go. That's exactly why he's so, it's like, love him or hate him. That's why everybody knows who he is. And I will say that, like, the reason I say roller coaster is because there was a while there where I was like, yeah, I'm kind of over him. He's all sales. And then, I got him on the podcast and he was super genuine. Like, he overstayed the time slot that he gave and talked to us after the recording for like 15 minutes. I actually had to like rush him off because we were interviewing Robert Kiyosaki like 5 minutes later. And I was like, wow, Grant, I'm sorry. Like, I've got another guest. But it was good, I love that quote. And I think that hits it right, dead on with what you're saying. It's like, if it doesn't matter necessarily, like, your product obviously has to be good, but if somebody's torn between Kleenex and great value Kleenex or tissue, right? Often they go for Kleenex and they're like the exact same product. This one's cheaper. This one's known better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think the underlying message of what we're talking about in this conversation is that if you have something that you're passionate about, if you're looking to make an impact and influence a certain community or group of people, there's a couple ways you could go about doing that. One is, like, you can be doing it while also trying to build stability for your family and your life, right? The way I think of that is, like, you're sort of like with one hand trying to put your mask on and then help everybody else put their mask on. And it can seem a little self-serving at times to put your mask on first, but there's a reason why they do that. Right? There's a reason why they put that in the airplanes, is because in order to help the most amount of people, you need to be on stable ground. It's really tough to be stressing out about your finances and about all of the finances can be, as you know, that's a pain point, right? It's still a pain point for me. I'm trying to get to a place where I've got this ultra stability, and we call that financial certainty. You've got certainty that you can fund all the goals that you want in your life. So that, not because I have this, grand goal to sit on the beach all day, and I'm probably going to take some beach vacations every year out to Hawaii. But the point is like, you don't also have to know what you're trying to do 10 years from now. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create the space so that I can take these asymmetrical upside bets. I can have the time to be in like receivership to what that means. But again, it's really hard to do that if you don't have financial stability. And so what a perfect model your career has been so far in order to build not only that stability, you built that at the same time you were building this asymmetrical upside bet, which is your personal brand. You had to get rid of a couple businesses so that you have now more time shift that stuff to the reliable side, because you're like me, you want to play on the asymmetrical upside. I don't want to play on the reliable side. Once I get to that reliable point, we're good. I don't need to go out and make $10 million a year in order to feel fulfilled. That's not why I'm doing this. It's like, so I can make an impact on someone else. Again, no judgment. If you're just trying to make as much money as possible, no judgment. But for someone who's trying to make a massive impact on the world, it behooves you to think in terms of this barbell, right? How do we build reliability? Get stuff out of the middle, stuff that's like not reliable, but it doesn't have an asymmetrical upside, and focus on the things that can move the needle and make that massive impact and, cash you out in a certain sense. Right. And I just love that you're the perfect representation of that.
Well, I appreciate that.
Anything else you want to add on barbell stuff?
No, I think we're good, man. I mean, it's a fun topic, and we could go on, but I think that covers kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I think so. So we finished this show by leaving our listeners with your greatest lesson learned. You've probably been, learned a lot of lessons over the years. So either leave us with your greatest lesson learned or something you've learned recently. What would that be?
Yeah, a lot of lessons. The one that I have been most passionate about relaying lately, and I think is probably the one that's impacted me the most, is to filter the advice that you receive through this lens. And that lens is, if the person that you're receiving the advice from has achieved what you want to achieve and is living the life that you want to live in that realm that they are giving you advice in. So an example of that is, and probably my favorite example of this is, let's say you want to become a world-class fighter. You want to go fight in the octagon, UFC, blah, blah, blah. Your mom loves you, has your best interest at heart, and is probably not who you're going to hire as a coach. You're probably going to hire Ray Longo, who is Chris Weidman's coach for striking. And you're going to hire, I don't know, one of the Gracie brothers for jiu-jitsu and whatever, right? Whoever those people are. I'm not a UFC guy, but those are the names that I know. You're not going to hire your mom. Although she has your best interest at heart, she's probably not the best person to coach you on UFC. And yet, for some dang reason, when people decide to go buy real estate, all of a sudden, mom, who may never have owned a house or owned an investment property, starts going, well, you don't want to buy investments because I heard X, Y, Z, and you listen to them rather than saying, hey, I know this person has my best interest at heart, but have they built $100 million portfolio or achieved financial freedom through real estate? Okay, so maybe in one ear, out the other ear, and I should go listen to people who have. And so I say that just to say, surround yourself with people who have achieved what you want to achieve, live the life you want to live in the realm that you're looking to achieve those things. Likewise, that real estate investor who's helping you crush it in real estate is also probably not going to be the person that you have coach you into the octagon. So find yourself people in what you want to achieve to take advice from, and then be able to say, hey, like if you're going through a tough spot in your marriage, take advice from your married people, not the people who've been through divorce.
Yeah.
Filter the advice.
What's your opinion on, I think we're all guilty of that to a certain degree, and we've made that mistake more than once. I found when I make that mistake, it's coming from a sense of insecurity, and I'm sort of like seeking consensus very early because I'm insecure about what to do, and I start asking people. That insecurity leads to confusion because now you're getting all these mixed signals from all these people who don't necessarily, not only do they not have the expertise in what you're asking, they probably have your best interest in mind. And that confuses you, right? It's easy to be like, oh, well, they probably don't have my best interest in mind. But when you ask your mom, what should I do about real estate investing? And she has no idea anything about real estate investing. It's only serves, not only is it triggered by your insecurity, you're just insecure, right? And so you're just seeking consensus from somebody to be like, just tell me what I should or shouldn't do.
Yep.
But then you're like, but I don't like the advice she's giving me. So you're not really looking for, you're just looking for like encouragement in a lot of cases, right? And I found myself, making that mistake so many times. I think that's just spot on advice. Got to make sure who you're asking advice for, first of all, understands the game that you're playing, because at best, if you ask someone who doesn't know the game that you're playing, they don't know your strengths, they don't know your weaknesses, they don't know your tendencies and your biases. Well, they're at best giving you generalized advice. And then secondly, you're expecting that someone who has no expertise in this realm somehow, knows what's best for you. So, if somebody is looking to get into, they're in the military or they're out of the military and they want to learn how to get into investing in real estate, Dave's probably a good guy to go potentially seek advice from, right? He's demonstrated not only that he understands what those people are going through, the challenges that they face, the education that they're not given, right? He understands the challenges in these types of things, but he also has a demonstrated track record of doing, right? Being in that field and executing on that for almost a decade at this point. So, Dave, if somebody is in that position and they want to seek some advice on what the next step is, and they've decided that, you check those couple boxes, not only that you know what you're doing, but you understand, the things in the military deal with, how can they get a hold of you to learn more about some of this stuff?
Well, they can go to thebestpodcastguest.com and they can grab themselves a free PDF copy of the No BS Guide to Military Life. Or they can connect with all my socials there, including our Facebook group, which has, I don't actually know if you're in my Facebook group yet, but if not, you should. But we got 55,000, maybe 56,000. I don't know. It's been growing really fast right now, but like 56,000 people in my Facebook group. So there's tons of value in there, more than I can keep up with. I'm not the value anymore. I can't answer half the questions that go on in that thing. I'd never get anything done. But, yeah, all the social media platforms are on there. So if you go to thebestpodcastguest.com, you can download the book and find whatever social you prefer and hit me up.
Bestpodcastguest.com, thebestpodcastguest.com. I love
it.
Super easy to remember, but we'll make sure to have all that in the show notes. Lastly, we encourage everybody who's listening to this. The title of this show is called The Investor Frame. We title it that because the investor frame says, knowing what you know now in the conversation that Dave and I just had, what changes do you need to make to your life or your business so that you can get closer to the things in life that matter to you without chasing more and more and more? Dave, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to hear you, share some of your story and what you're passionate about and how you think about the barbell. It's been fantastic. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, brother.
All right, guys. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next